The Iowa women's basketball team is going to win a national championship. How? We break it down today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, we're a little bit under the weather. If you're an everydayer, my apologies. Getting to you a little bit late here on a Thursday and not feeling great. Not feeling well. It's an illness, a little sickness. My little dude, 4-year-old Jack, he had a cold and apparently dad got it. So we're walking with it. That's okay though, because we got a ton to get into, including this Final Four. And as I said at the top, I was going to win the national championship. Well, Iowa can win the national championship. Now, this is not breaking news. And if you know anything about me, I'm not about hot takery. We're not going to just sit here, but we're going to give you the reasons today and lay out the blueprint of what it's going to take for Iowa to win the national championship, to win 2 more games and cut down the nets in Cleveland. And for the first time in women's basketball program history, win a national championship. The likely path is as difficult as Iowa or anybody could face. Knocking out the defending champions a round ago in the Elite Eight. Here comes UConn, the program for the last 3 decades in women's college basketball and really women's college athletics as a whole, and what Gino Auriemma has built. And then the likelihood that for the second consecutive year, you're going to have to beat this undefeated South Carolina team and all the motivation that's going to be on the side. I mean, it's a path as difficult as you're going to find, but it's what's in front of Iowa, and they definitely, absolutely can get there. Now, in the simplest equation, Caitlin Clark needs to continue to be Superman. There's no doubt about it. Or Superwoman. She has to play at a level that is the elite that she is. This is going to be difficult against UConn. UConn, a good defensive team. One of the best defensive teams you're going to find. They have a defender in Beckers that is very good. They can go a couple of different routes also in this game of what they're looking to do defensively. Do they throw Mole out there for a while? Is it going to be KK Arnold on her for a while? A very good defender. And as a whole, one of my biggest takeaways is looking at some of their individual defensive metrics that are out there. One thing, in women's basketball, we do not have the volume of statistical profiles that are out there on the men's side. There are some numbers out there, but they're not as in-depth as what you saw on the men's side. But one thing jumped off the page, and it's one of the first defensive numbers that I look at, and it is per 40 minutes. Just a defensive efficiency number, very simplified. I mean, there's not a ton to it. Per 100 possessions, defensive rating. You can find it on Sport Reference, and I use it a lot when we talk about the men's team. I use it a lot for the women's basketball team. 100 is basically average. If you are above 100 as a defender, means you're giving up a lot of points. You're not a very good defender. To show you how bad Iowa's defense was on the men's side, they didn't have a player under 100 this year. But if you're below that, you're really good. If you're under 90, we're talking elite. Well, how about this? 3 defenders for this UConn team are in the 70s. That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Paige Beckers, Edwards, Griffin, who is hurt, are amongst those 3 that are in the 70s in defensive rating. This is ridiculous, but that's what they are, and that's what they put together. This team's really good defensively, and that's where the concern lies. So in order to combat that, obviously, Caitlin Clark has to play at another ridiculous level, and it needs to be not just scoring. You have to look deeper than just putting points up. It has to be efficient. Keep the turnovers down, too. Now, in the game, going back to the Colorado game, just 2 turnovers in the game. And we know the way that Caitlin Clark plays, the way that she handles the basketball, she is prone to high turnover numbers. It just goes with the territory. And we're used to it. But some of the turnovers she had, especially in the first half of the game against LSU, They're just careless. They were sloppy. They were lazy. They were plays you can't afford. It's not that you have to play perfect to beat UConn, but you got to play cleaner. Certainly than Iowa did, at least during the first half of the game against LSU. That's another component. Keep the turnovers down because that defense is going to be up on you. They're going to be forcing turnovers. They're going to be incredibly difficult to get around and get through. And that means Caitlin Clark playing at a high level. Of course, you need other people to step up. Hannah Stolke, as we saw, got in foul trouble against Angel Reese. And now here comes Edwards on the other side for UConn. An incredibly difficult matchup. It is going to be another one of those games where we're likely going to see Addison O'Grady out there again. AJ Edinger saw some minutes. Sharon Goodman come out there, for a couple-minute run. Don't be surprised if we see all four post players coming in here. That goes hand in hand with another way to beat UConn. What I was going to have to do is they're going to have to dictate pace. Easier said than done. Iowa, one of the fastest teams in the country, as we know, the top scoring team in the country. On the other side, UConn's 108th in the country in terms of pace. So they want to slow the tempo down. Iowa wants to quicken it up. I think Iowa needs to have this game at their pace. Offensively, defensively, this is an efficient UConn team. This is a team that does things right, does things smart. They're well coached, as you'd anticipate, and they're going to have a game plan too. They are not going to try out the game plans we saw the last two rounds from Colorado and LSU that are still head scratching on what they were looking to do. I don't believe you're going to see a whole lot of miscues defensively on high screen and roll action. You're not going to see a lot of defenders going underneath screens, leading to Caitlin Clark having open three-pointers. Don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that. This is going to be a smarter team. This is going to be a better team. This is going to be a well-schooled team. And because of that, you need to have them play at Iowa's pace in order to win this game. A couple other numbers I want to throw out to you. And that is a little bit surprising to me. 3-point rate. We talked about this with LSU. Don't take a ton of 3-pointers. Kind of similar for UConn. Now, not at the same level as LSU. They take more than LSU, but 198th in the country in 3-point rate. Now, normally, when that is the case, you see teams also not shooting a lot of threes. But they are shooting a lot of free throws. That's not the case also for this UConn team. 267th in the country in free throw rate. Surprising numbers that don't normally marry with each other. Normally, if you see a team that takes a ton of threes, then they don't shoot as many free throws and vice versa. This one, they don't get to the free throw line a ton, and they don't take a ton of 3-pointers. Kind of an oddity, at least in their statistical profile. But we're talking about how to win a national championship. We're talking about keys to beat UConn, and then waits South Carolina. Look, if we get to Sunday and we get to that spot, and for some people, the validation for Caitlin Clark, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on here in the show. It's a little silly, I think, a little crazy that you believe that that's what it needs to happen in order to validate what has been an incredible career. But that aside, if they get to that moment, I think the beginning of that game is going to be so important. Now, the game plan from a year ago that Iowa had against South Carolina, I don't think it's going to work as well. The way that the South Carolina team is built, they're built in the same vintage Dawn Staley toughness era that we've seen over the last decade now with South Carolina, and that's still going to be the case. However, there's a new team outside of Cardozo, who, though she wasn't a starter a year ago, she was a starter, and we saw the rebound advantage that they had a year ago. Getting off to a good start, if they get there, is going to be so important. It can happen. We're 2 games away from Iowa winning a national championship. I know the expectations were high coming in this year, but now to be on the precipice, getting ready for this one, oh boy, feels so good. Let's get this thing tipped off, and we'll have more on the matchup against UConn coming up on your feed on Friday as we will break things down with Locked On, a crossover edition with Locked On UConn, and get a breakdown of everything happening there. As we continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes, let's go to the man on the beat. He is John Bohnenkamp from the Associated Press and from HawkeyeNation.com. We'll talk a little bit about this women's basketball team. We got some basketball news on the men's front to talk about and a little bit more. We'll do that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. The sports calendar, well, it is absolutely loaded right now, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action. course, we got baseball starting up. We got the Final Fours here in front of us on both the men's and the women's side. NBA, NHL, all coming down the stretch. So much happening, so much going on. And FanDuel has you covered. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets for any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and a whole lot more. $200. How about that with a winning $5 bet? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for the big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Let's talk about the matchup tomorrow night and then potentially look ahead to Sunday, assuming that Iowa can get by UConn. I guess on the surface, what's your concern about this game from Iowa's perspective tomorrow night?
I don't honestly. I have a really good feeling about this game, and I think the only concern you have is if you're not making shots. But they've also shown the capability to defend, and so that's why I'm pretty confident about tomorrow night. I mean, UConn is UConn, and I mean there is that bloodline there, and Gino's going to try to figure out a way to. He said the other day, you can't stop Caitlin Clark. But they're going to try to figure out a way to take everybody else away.
Yeah.
So that is going to be the key thing is who steps up besides Caitlin? Is it going to be Kate Martin? Is it going to be Sydney Folter? Is it going to be, the Hannah Stuelke? Is it going to be some post combination of, the two or three they used? It's all going to be, she's going to have help tomorrow night. I mean, obviously she's going to carry that game. She is going to, you saw that in the LSU game, how she took over in the third quarter. There is going to be that time tomorrow night when I think she's going to have to do that. But there's going to be some other players step up. And Gabby Marshall, if she can get going, that's big. And like I said, if somebody else helps her out, Iowa's in pretty good shape tomorrow night.
My biggest concern is Aaliyah Edwards inside. She is tall. She is physical. She is tough. She has also played a lot of basketball.
Experience.
Yes, very veteran in there. We saw that it was a great play out of Addison O'Grady, getting her in there and what she did defensively.
She was great, Trent.
Against Angel Reese. Edwards, though, is right there, I believe, with Angel Reese in terms of versatility and what she can do. So is this setting up to be another Addison O'Grady? You better have it tonight?
Yeah, and I think again, when you look at some X factors, she has to be one of them. And if not her, then AJ Edgar. Somebody's going to have to provide some post help tomorrow night because they're going to try to get Hannah Stuelke in foul trouble.
Yeah.
Because if you take that away, that kind of neutralizes a little bit of Iowa's offense. So you're going to have somebody in that post step up. You're going to have to get some production, no mistakes, and good defense. And so it's going to have to be one of those two. And even if you throw Sharon Goodman in for a couple of minutes just to keep a rotation of players going, I don't know, but you've got to do something tomorrow night to at least have some sort of post presence inside.
Do we anticipate it will be Gabby Marshall versus Beckers?
That would be my guess. I mean, because I don't think you want to put Caitlin on her because that becomes, then you kind of maybe take her legs away for later in the game when you need her. So I don't think you want to do that, but I do think, Gabby Marshall is your best defender. She's your best guard on defense, and I think that's what you have to do.
And we just don't see Caitlin Clark get that assignment. Very often where she's going up against the best offensive player, the best perimeter player for any team. So now they're probably going to lay off her, and that's what they do, and keep those legs and jump some passing lanes, do those types of things. One thing, go back to South Carolina a year ago. It was a great game plan, laying off the shooters. They came up with something good in that one. Great game plan, I thought, against LSU in order to combat what they did and kind of the evolution that they made in the second quarter and running them out of the gym in the third quarter.
Who's the brains behind that?
So it was Fitz had the one against South Carolina, and then it was Raina Harmon who had the game plan against LSU. Any idea, have you heard who has the scout for this one against UConn?
I haven't heard, but I'm sure they've probably got something cooked up. Yeah. The one thing that has really impressed me about this coaching staff, and they've always impressed me, but one of the things that's impressed me starting late last year, and when it's come to big games in the postseason, they have figured something out.
Yes.
And it's something, and I think they plan ahead. They look ahead. They look and say, okay, we may get this team at some point. What do we have for them? And as much as they like talking about, one game at a time, I do think they think 2 steps ahead. And I think they've probably been thinking about this for a while. What do we do here? And so that goes back to my confidence in them tomorrow night, is I think they've got something figured out on how to win this game. And I think it's been something that's been cooking for a while, because I think that LSU game plan was cooking for a while.
Well, yeah, they knew the potential draw and how it would unfold in front of them. I don't think that's crazy to think. Molly D is practicing today. She's on the floor going through practice. It may have just wrapped up, but within the last hour. She is still wearing a brace, but it's not the same one she had in Albany. It's gone down a size. Do you risk playing her at this point, John? I mean, Falter's been so damn good in this game. Don't you? I mean, it'd be great for Molly D to be able to dress, just to have her on the bench, if nothing else. Do you see her playing?
No. And I mean, if she does, it'll be very briefly. Because, I mean, it's not just the fact she hasn't played in the game. She hasn't practiced.
Right.
And I think conditioning goes, and I think that conditioning goes away. So, do they get something out of her tomorrow? I don't know. Is she going to be, I mean, if there is any chance of availability, if she can give him 5 minutes, she's going to give him 5 minutes. And so I don't expect it, but it also wouldn't surprise me. But like I said, I just can't see her being much of a factor at all in either of these 2 games, just because she's been out for so long.
If they do advance to Sunday, it'll be likely South Carolina waiting there undefeated once again, as they were a year ago in the first game of the Final Four. Completely different South Carolina team outside of Cardoza. This is a completely new group. They're young, they're talented, they're long. They have a bunch of different things here. In a way, though, could that game be even more difficult because of the motivation that Dawn Staley in South Carolina is going to have than it was even a year ago?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, but I do think South Carolina they haven't played their best basketball here in the last couple of weeks. I mean, they've had to cut and scramble in some of these games. And so on one hand, that you sit there and think, okay, they're vulnerable. On the other hand, it might make them a little bit tougher because, okay, they know they've won these close games, and maybe there's a little more confidence there now that they've been tested. It is going to be a very difficult matchup. And again, it's going to be one of those things just like last year where nobody ever plays a perfect game, but you better be pretty close to it to beat them. And I think this Iowa team can do that. I think it is as equipped as last year's team was to do that on so many levels, mentally, physically, whatever. But it is going to be a very difficult matchup, and it will have. There's going to be a lot of really good storylines in that one if it comes to pass.
No question, John. As much as you've covered this team over the, we'll just keep it with this group. Do you remember when it was in Kate Martin's career? Was it her sophomore season, or when did she start to have the impact on this group that she did? Do you remember? Because obviously, I mean, she was Robin the other night to Caitlin Clark's Batman, if you will. When did she start to take to fill that role? Do you remember?
It took a couple of years because I remember she started out, she was hurt, right before she got here. And it took her kind of a year really to develop. But I mean, it was like maybe that second year you started to see a lot of confidence. And it took her a couple of years before the ability that they saw in her really started to come out. And I think some of it just had to do with health, but I think she is as good as anybody right now. And that's what they're going to need.
Last 2 times out, Colorado, I hated their game plan. LSU, I didn't like what they were doing. And certainly defensively with Haley Van Lith trying to guard Caitlin Clark. I don't think Gino's going to make that same kind of mistake. What do you think he has up his sleeve here? What he's going to do defensively to slow down Clark and the rest of the team?
I think it's going to be just keeping them out of the inside. Because if she gets going and gets to the basket, then that just really opens up her game. But if you make it where she's just shooting threes from the outside, she can have bad shooting nights. We've seen that.
Yep.
And so I think, like I said, I think he's going to realize, she's going to get hers. You don't want her to get 40, but you can live with, somewhere between 25 and 35 if you're taking away everybody else. So I don't know what I mean, like I said, I think it's basically keeping all of them out of the inside, keeping all of them out of the lane, because that really kind of that really takes away a dimension of this offense.
Is Lisa Bluter getting the credit she deserves for this, particularly this year, John, when they got there last year, obviously, then they had graduation and they didn't, the portal was not good to them. Maybe they didn't see a fit, or whoever they were going after didn't see the fit of coming to Iowa. But we know that, that the portal did not have an impact on this roster. Lisa Bluter apparently did. Is she getting enough credit for this team?
No, because I think she did a masterful job of handling this team from the beginning, from the end of last season till now. There was all this talk of, they've got to play LSU again in the regular season, and my argument was, you don't want to do that. You don't want to play them. You don't want to waste the edge you have, in the sense of the motivation you have. You don't want to waste that on a December game, and she resisted that urge and still played a very difficult schedule. She really didn't go hunting in the portal. They made a couple of efforts, but it was more of, this is what we need and how can this person fit? And she just rolled with what she got, and what she did, this team has far exceeded. I think a lot of people expected them to be a really good team. I don't think they expected this kind of run, especially this late in the season. And I think it's just a testament to the fact that she stuck with what she wanted to do.
Let's jump over to the men's side with you, John Bohnenkamp, joining us from the AP and Hawkeye Nation. And Sandfort is testing the waters. Is it as simple as that, or in a very, what is considered maybe one of the worst NBA drafts of all time? Do you see a real possibility that at minimum, somebody gives him a two-way deal, a second-round pick, and he is off to the league?
It's very possible. I mean, it was funny when he said the other day he was going to do this. I went and looked at ESPN's mock draft, and again, that's not taking into account a lot of early entries, European players, whatever. And they had him early second round. And it's like, so if his name's out there like that right now, you never know. But this process does not hurt a player. You go through it, you get a different voice, you get a different perspective on your game. And I mean, it has helped so many players over the years with Iowa. And I think he tests the waters. If he thinks there's a chance he could go, he'll take it. And I get that, and I understand that, but it doesn't hurt anything to go in there and get some feedback from some experts, get a different voice. And I think it's good for him no matter what he chooses.
John Bohnenkamp from HawkeyeNation.com, and the Associated Press. Great to catch in with John and talk a little Hawkeyes with him and get his perspective on the Final Four matchup. Well, time for predictions. Yeah, coming up tomorrow, we will have, coming up about noon, we will get you the crossover episode with me and Locked On UConn, and we will have that full, but I got to give you my prediction here. What are we going to see? Is Iowa going to make it to Sunday and the national championship game? What's it take to beat UConn? We'll do that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick you can plug into your existing TV. It's going to provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On, most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and a whole lot more. And they also have great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, name it, they got it. Check it out. Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked it out, trust me, you're going to want to check out Fire TV channels. Learn more at Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. That's Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every single day. All right, prediction time. And I've been waffling. I've been going back and forth. This is not something that I enjoy doing. For everydayers, you know, I am not what you would call an optimistic Hawkeye fan. And maybe it's the years of scar tissue that have been a part of me, the bad losses, some of my earliest memories, the 86 Rose Bowl after the 85 football season, 86-87 basketball year ending in defeat to UNLV. Maybe that's what shaped what some people would call negativity. I call it scar tissue. I don't like to have the feeling of being set up to fail, if you will. And because of that, it is difficult many times for me to choose Iowa. I call it my emotional hedge. And I emotionally hedge by put a couple bucks on the game. Betting, well, in this instance, it'd be UConn against Iowa. But as we heard from John Bohnenkamp, as I've been looking at this game, the one thing is when I looked at those individual statistical profile numbers defensively for UConn, they really did give me more pause because I was ready to come in here and pick the Hawkeyes and not to dominate the game, not to do even like they did against LSU, but to win. And at that point, who cares if you cover the number right? All we care about is a win. And I've gone back and forth, and I've been there for a while. And then, boy, even just taking the 2.5 or the 3 that's out there, you want to go that? No. Give me the Hawks. Give me Caitlin Clark. Caitlin has faced UConn twice in her career with the Hawkeyes. And we talked a little bit about why this might be a little more personal for her. Yes, she's had opportunities, but not opportunities like this. Not with a fully formed collegiate Caitlin Clark. I know Gino Auriemma is going to have a great game plan. I know his team is going to be ready to play. But with their lack of depth, the injuries that they've had this year, Iowa's ability to really push tempo against everybody this season. And the other thing, you look at the losses this year for UConn, and every single one of them, it was their defense didn't show up, or not at the same level that it has this year. That's been the calling card when they've taken an L this year. D wasn't there. Hey, instead of Hannah Stuelke getting in foul trouble, how about we get Edwards in foul trouble? Let's get going right away. Everybody doing their thing, knocking down shots, doing everything. Let's have some fun. Another step on the path. You avenge your loss a year ago in the national championship game against LSU. Now you get the chance against as accomplished of a program as we know in collegiate sports, the UConn women. And then potentially another shot against number 1 South Carolina. Oof. Doesn't set up any better. You know, sometimes TV scripts, movie scripts, oh, that couldn't happen. This kind of feels like one of those, right? We'll see. We'll see. Again, coming up a little later in the afternoon on Friday, we will have a crossover edition, a big breakdown of Iowa UConn. We'll do that for you here on your Locked On Hawkeyes feed. Also coming up on Friday night into Saturday morning, we will have an instant reaction podcast after this one goes final, Iowa UConn. That will be coming up on your feeds, and also you can find it on YouTube. Make sure you have it. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Just hit that subscribe button. It takes just a moment for you. If you're on the podcast side of things, make sure you subscribe, 5-star reviews. It greatly helps us out and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.